Hi, everybody. David Fogel here, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, and I have the pleasure of being here today with Elizabeth Boradman, violist, who just recently completed recording the viola part for my Symphonina number 3 as part of the International Symphonina Orchestra. And for those of you who don't know, the International Symphonina Orchestra is an orchestra that the Symphonina Foundation supports with players from all over the world, literally from Africa to Asia, Australia, even right here in the United States. A few players from the United States, and they all record their parts separately for whatever it is that they are recording, and then I do the mixing to make them play all together. And typically Gary Gray does the mastering. Gary Gray is co-founder of the Symphonina Foundation with me. And on our album that we released this year, which made it to number 1 on Billboard, as you can see, guy over there he is on my wall, Billboard number 1 with Alexander Unseth's Symphonina was performed by the International Symphony Orchestra. So it was great to have Elizabeth record the viola part. Elizabeth, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing really well. Thank you.
Now, you're based in Seattle, correct?
Yes, I am based in Seattle right now.
Yeah. What's it like being a working violist in Seattle, Washington?
It's great. Seattle has been fantastic. I've lived and worked and studied in a lot of different places around the world, and Seattle has been the best one so far.
Excellent.
There's a really nice kind of balance of more kind of artistically enriching projects, and then things that, more kind of corporate things that pay well. So as a musician, it's important to have that balance just to keep, moving business along. But
For sure.
to keep from burning out, you need to be, doing projects that you care about as well, which was why I was so excited to
Yeah.
help your recording. I'm very excited to hear the end result of that.
It came out great. So I think you're one of 5 violists who recorded for me, but we all do 2 tracks, right? So I have the option sometimes to go between 8, 9, or 10 viola players essentially as part of the section. So you're very well represented, and it's really great to have a strong viola section. I don't know how you feel, but sometimes as a non-string player, and as I mentioned to Laura Chan when we did our podcast recently, my extent of playing the violin includes 4 months of some lessons about 6 years ago. As I was getting more serious about symphony writing, I wanted to at least experience what a string player goes through, even though I'd never be able to play at your level. I just want to have an appreciation for what it is to play that instrument. It's sort of like you get this vibe as a non-string player that somehow there's a little rift between violinists and violists, maybe. But then, you don't know really how serious to take that. So I guess as a violist, let me ask you, what is your feeling about that?
That's funny. Well, there are a lot of viola jokes, just because the history of the viola is honestly, the viola as a virtuosic instrument is a relatively new idea, a new concept historically. So because it used to be kind of a secondary instrument for a lot of violinists, and just, it used to have just very, very simple parts. There are a lot of good viola jokes, but luckily violists are all pretty chill, and most of them have a good sense of humor. So I think that it kind of, it suits. It's fine.
I think maybe it's a little bit like, I live in San Diego, and in baseball, we have the Padres, and Los Angeles has the Dodgers, and there's always this little, friendly rivalry. Sometimes it's not so friendly, but most of the time it's friendly. It's a little rivalry, but then, a lot of times Padre fans, I think, still root for the Dodgers when they play the Yankees. So, it's how it goes. But how did you find your way to playing the viola, let's say, instead of cello or violin or trumpet for that matter?
Yeah. So I started on piano when I was about 3. And then in elementary school, there was, a certain year where they start doing music lessons at school as well. And that was, in my family, that was the time where we could take up a second instrument if we wanted to. My older sister played cello, and I loved cello, but I, of course, didn't want to do the same exact instrument as her. And I picked viola because it was it was next best in my mind.
Mhm.
And I don't really remember the process of choosing viola. My mom says that I just was sure I wanted to play viola, and she didn't really know why, because it was, a lot of kids didn't really know what that even was. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, so I'm not entirely sure how I picked it besides the fact that I usually like to do things that are a little different. But I'm really glad that I picked viola because it's as I've developed and grown up, it's really what suits me. So yeah,
That's great.
I'm glad.
Have you tried violin and cello along the way, or have you just kind of focused like a
Yes, I
laser on no? Okay.
I mean, I teach violin, so
Hmm.
I play violin as well. I don't perform so often on violin because, there are plenty of violinists out there. Um, but I never tried cello. I mean, I've messed around on it, but
Hmm.
not in a serious way. It's a very different instrument.
What makes it so different? Aside from where you hold it, of course, but
Well, that's the main thing. Just coordination wise, it's of course the way you hold it is the other way around. Um, so it's not that different in the way that it produces sound.
hmm.
Um, the finger patterns would be very different than on violin and viola. Violin and viola can be played in very similar ways.
Hmm.
It's kind of basic setup with our two hands despite a slightly different, adjustments with the bow to make the sound project because the viola strings are much thicker than violin strings. And the placement of the fingers is obviously a little different, but they're more similar that it's easy to be interchangeable.
And for those who might be listening who aren't familiar with the range of a viola relative to a violin, a viola can go down to the C below middle C, right? That's your lowest note. And then how high up would you feel comfortable going on the viola?
Um, well, gosh, I don't know. We go up as high as we need to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay.
that's a hard question because then you have a lot of harmonics too. Um, we go up pretty high, but for the most part, just out of practicality
Hmm.
with the in a string quartet or an orchestra, the viola stays pretty squarely in the alto clef, and then dips into treble clef for some of the higher things.
Okay.
But definitely they're just not needed super high.
Yeah, so an arranger is going to probably give those higher parts to the violins anyway. So they're going to give you something else to do to make them sound better. In that case, if they have the melody or whatever they're doing, right?
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so as I've read your resume, my goodness, you've traveled everywhere as a musician. Where are your favorite places that you've traveled in your career? I
Well,
mean, you've gone
oh my,
everywhere.
yes, I have traveled a lot for viola and it's been wonderful. A great opportunity. I'd say, I really loved living in Berlin. That was a really cool place to be a musician.
When were you
There's so
there?
I was there from 2018 till 2000 or 2021, almost
Okay,
22. Yeah.
okay, that's long enough to know a city for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, and part of it was during the pandemic, so things
yeah,
things
right.
were slow for a bit. But it was interesting getting to do a lot of very different things. There was a lot of contemporary music and contemporary art going on in Berlin. It's a very artsy city. So it was kind of fun to push the boundaries and do some things that I might not normally be doing. Playing in the Berliner Dom was pretty incredible just to be in that historical space. But I really loved. I lived in London for about 4 years as well for my undergrad, and um, I really liked the classical music culture there. There are a lot of these small churches. There are small churches everywhere, and almost all of them have these lunchtime chamber music concert series. So, you know, multiple times a week, or maybe just on the weekend or whatever, you could catch a usually free lunchtime concert, and or donation based.
Yeah, right. Of
Uh,
course, right. Yeah.
that's a little problematic in itself, but but there's always live chamber music somewhere, and as a performer it is a really great thing that's just happening everywhere, and they're well attended too.
That sounds great. So, in aside from Germany, England, inside America, you performed at Madison Square Garden, if I understand correctly.
Yes, just this summer. Yeah, it's my first time there.
So you were playing with the duo group Odessa, is that correct?
Yes,
So what was
yes.
that experience like?
Oh my
They're
goodness. It
electronic music, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
They are, I guess they're technically EDM, but their music is not it's different. It's more kind of soundtrack inspired. It's very
Huh.
emotional.
Okay.
Um it's I've always been a huge fan of them, and they're from Seattle
Mm.
originally. So or Seattle area. So yeah, getting asked to go on tour with them was just an absolute dream come true. Because touring can be it's fun, but it is taxing. So it was wonderful to be doing my kind of first pop-ish tour with a group that I really, really liked. The other players were incredible and very professional. Everybody was very respectful and it was super organized. Um, which is important on a tour.
I bet it is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
the parts was different, very different from classical parts. Everything was supposed to be memorized, and of course, classical
Mm.
musicians memorize music all the time, but usually it's solo Bach or whatever. So yeah, basically it was interesting, kind of having to work a lot with kind of stage management and knowing where you needed to walk at what time and remembering where you needed to get to, and in addition to, of course, remembering your notes and when to start
So
and when
you're
to
almost
stop.
an actor at that point, right? You're giving your lines, so to speak, which are your musical notes, and you're also part of the performance, if I'm understanding you.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope they paid you for both of those things, acting and
Oh,
playing.
yes, they did. They were incredibly uh, respectful and thoughtful
Great.
musicians. So
That's great. When you're playing with everybody, so to speak, there, do you have like a full orchestra setup, or was it a chamber kind of orchestra, or what should I imagine
so
in
it
my
was
head?
there were six string players.
Okay.
Yeah, so two violins, two violas, two cellos.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also have a drum line, and then
Yeah.
they also have some brass. They have a cello, or sorry, a trumpet and a trombonist.
Okay.
And the drum line and the brass had been working with Odessa for a while, so they were, pretty polished. And
Mm-hmm.
then new asset to the tour was the strings. They had lots of strings in their recordings,
Mm-hmm.
but they'd done a couple of performances with strings, just one off, but they hadn't taken strings on tour yet. So this was the kind of next level up for them. And the this group has a lot of hardcore fans, and they were excited about the strings edition.
I bet. I bet. So it must have gone great, and they must be wanting to keep doing it, right? Make it bigger and better.
Yes, yes, yes. If they do another tour, I would be so thrilled.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, you mentioned something that you got your undergraduate in London. If I remember correctly, you got your master's degree in the United States.
Yes.
So if I could ask you, what were the advantages for choosing the schools that you chose? Why did you choose them? And then also, like, what is your experience, if any, of the difference between maybe how classical music is taught, as I think you were in performance, if I remember right, but I might not remember correctly, in the UK versus how it's handled here. And maybe if someone else is facing those same sort of decisions, what could they look to answer for themselves to make the right choice?
Right. Okay. So, um, I guess the overarching answer would be that the classical music culture is fairly universal. So I have noticed larger differences between conservatories or music schools in the same city, even than between different countries,
Okay.
which is strange because, of course, we have huge cultural differences between different countries and different cities, even. Um, but just for example, when I went to do my undergrad, I did a couple of auditions in the UK and in London, namely, and I was choosing between Royal College of Music and Trinity Laban, which is where I ended up going. Um, and I kind of based my decision off of just a gut feeling when I was there for my audition. I ended up playing much more well and much more confidently at the school that I liked more, which was where I went, Trinity Laban. So that was kind of just a gut reaction, but for example, these two schools had very, very different kind of ideologies of how they were teaching. Um, the older schools like Royal Academy and Royal College tend to have a more traditional approach to preparing their students for the world of classical music. The reason I liked Trinity Laban was they were very, very modern in their thinking about how to prepare students for the real world. And that is that simply there are not enough orchestral positions that are salary paying, for every good player being pumped out of a conservatory to have a job in one. So their approach was very much like, look, most likely, unless that's your dream, if that is your dream, then go for it. But if, it's not for everyone, and honestly, there isn't room for everyone. So be ready to run your own business. Be ready to be able to do all these different kinds of music, not just classical. You might be involved with contemporary things where you're expected to do extended techniques that are maybe not comfortable with, or playing all different kinds of genres. This is how you promote your business. This is how you keep organized. This is this idea of like a portfolio musician, as opposed to just having, one job and just being really good at your instrument. So I really appreciated that in my undergrad, because I felt like it made me more well equipped and well adjusted for the music world in reality. And then for my master's, I guess I as much as I love living in London, I wanted to be slightly closer to home, and my family's in Seattle, so I chose San Francisco, and I loved my professor there. That was a big reason for why I chose to study there, was to study with Jody Levitz. And my experience there was 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 wonderful as well, and also very kind of forward thinking, as far as preparing their students for real life, and open-minded, understanding that everybody has different needs and different passions within the music world. Um, yeah, I guess my time in Germany, I didn't study there. I took some lessons on and off, and I think that Germany is a little bit stricter with their idea of how the classical music world should function. Berlin is not very German. Berlin is very cosmopolitan. So Berlin itself was a little more accepting of different ideas. But
Mm.
throughout the rest of Germany, things are a little bit more, in sync in one direction, as far as if you want to be a classical
We mentioned
musician.
two bands there in sync in one direction. That's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
But all right, so you finished. That's all great. So and for me, grad school for me was not in music, it was in engineering. But I would say, who your advisor is in grad school is critical to
Yes.
being fun, successful, whatever you want to say to it. That's that. When you finished your master's, did you have any thought to go on to get a PhD, either in viola
Yeah.
performance or something like that? What was your decision making there?
Yeah, I actually did. My professor in my master's actually invited me to come on with her and do a PhD at. She was moving to University of Miami, and she asked if I wanted to come with and continue with her and do a PhD. Um, but I was at that point, I was pretty excited to get out into the world and kind of do my own thing. And so I decided, not now, maybe later,
I was going
but
to
not
say
now.
it's always there for you, right? If you wanted to pick it up again, you could do that.
And I
Yeah, yeah.
think I also at that point was kind of torn between focusing. She taught modern viola, and I was also starting to kind of delve into the world of Baroque viola as well. And
Hmm.
I felt like if I stayed in for PhD, I'd really need to focus on one or the other. And I was kind of enjoying getting to this place where I was able to do both.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You mentioned Baroque music, and I had a note here that you entered the San Francisco Conservatory Baroque Music Baroque Concerto competition, which you won in
Yeah,
2017. So congratulations.
thank you.
And can you tell us a little bit more about how that competition was, and maybe how other competitions go for performers, so people can have a better idea of what it's like to enter and prepare and compete and win?
Yeah. So yeah, composition or competitions are a funny thing. They are I don't do a lot of performance competitions because they kind of go against what I like about music. But and that is that I like that everyone should play things differently, because why should we all play things exactly the same way?
Right.
So this is an issue with some of the larger kind of classical competitions. But this one was a little different, because I feel like in general the world of historical performance is a little bit more open to interpretation anyways, and that's part of what makes it so fun. This competition was it was fantastic. Basically, just when you prepare, you just, practice, 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 memorize it, play with your accompanist as much as possible, and pick something you really love to play, because it comes through. If it's something that you associate with auditions or something stressful, you're not going to play it with heart. And I think that the true performances that will speak to a jury or a panel are those that are really, from the heart, because you really actually love this piece of music and you're singing it through your instrument. So this is the most important thing, if it's something where you have an option of what to play. And yeah, the the reward was getting to perform the concerto with the ensemble, with the Baroque ensemble, and it was so much fun. It was not like other kind of concerto experiences, and it was more like chamber music, because with Telemann there's a lot of back and forth. In general, with Baroque music, there's a lot of back and forth, and I think that for me is much more fun than, oh, I'm the soloist and here's the accompanying orchestra.
Yes, right. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people do like the spotlight on them if they're a soloist like that, and it is about them. And then there's other people who appreciate that, but also like that sort of communication, right, between
Yeah,
the
yeah,
soloists and the rest, or just that it's a team effort, right? It's everybody
yeah.
working together.
The ebb and flow keeps it, like, keeps you present, because you
Yeah,
can't, you're constantly listening and back and forth, and it helps it be a more alive, I guess.
yeah. I make like in jazz music, as you can see behind me. If we're on the podcast first, no one can see behind me, but as you can see behind me, I'm a jazz player, also saxophone, guitar, from and piano. But for jazz things, like you have the opportunity to take the lead for a little bit, and then you have to hand it back to everybody else, right? So in a competition like that, I'm assuming that's not how it's going. Everything is scripted, but maybe hey, I could ask, have you done anything with viola playing that's improvised? Or is everything
Well,
already charted out for you?
no, actually, there is a lot of improvisation in, let's see, in early music. Actually, Baroque
Hmm.
and early music is very similar to jazz, and that it's very much, a lot of times it's just a chord chart, and then
Nice.
you
Okay.
you improvise. A lot of things are improvised, especially slow movements. So there's a really big similarity between early music and folk music and jazz. And then sometimes with contemporary music, you'll have composers request that they'll give a little bit of guideline, and then the score will say to kind of, take liberties here and there.
Hmm.
Um, and then I also compose as well. So some of my pieces will have improvisation in them. So yeah.
That's great. So, in terms of what you're composing, like what are you working on right now that's composition, and when is it going to be ready for us to listen and enjoy?
Well, let's see. I guess the most recent thing I composed with viola, um, is the Seascape Suite for multiple violas, and that's a piece I composed for dancers. And I recorded it when I was in Germany. Got a grant, to do this project, and then I worked with some contemporary dancers and a film team to make the whole thing come to life. And that was
Nice.
just absolute dream come true. So that's actually available. That's on YouTube. I'm thinking about probably, um, releasing just the audio on Spotify soon.
And
I
what was the
also
name
have
of that piece for people who want to look it up, like me, in a minute here when we're done with our podcast?
It's called the Seascape Suite, as in
Seascape Week. Okay. Yeah. Great.
yeah. And then I also have, a pop project that I've been working on and off for the last several years. I released an album. My pop artist alter ego name is Ella Ira,
Okay.
ELA Ira.
Okay.
And yeah, I produce kind of alternative electronic music and sing, and there's viola on that as well. My second album is in the works. I don't have an exact release date yet. I'm almost done recording it. It's been taking a while because I keep writing songs that are completely different genres and then trying to figure out
Mm.
how to present them in in a cohesive manner. But anyways, that's coming out soon as well.
Now, for your recording setup, are you recording at home? Do you go to a studio? How do you handle that?
Yes, so I mostly record at home. And so when I recorded the viola parts for your piece, I use my it's an Apogee mic.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, the brand is Apogee. I think it's a 96K. I set it up on just a standing mic stand. I use a sound isolation shield around it just to kind of help keep out, extraneous sounds.
Hmm.
Um, and then I guess my digital audio workstation is Logic Pro.
Yep. Same here.
So
Yep.
pretty basic setup, or standard setup.
That's all good. Do you also have the opportunity to use a clip-on mic for the viola if that's appropriate, or are
Yeah,
you?
I do use a clip-on mic on stage sometimes.
Hmm.
But when I record at home, I've been using I haven't used a clip-on mic, although I am thinking about trying it soon. We'll see.
Okay. So when you're playing, I guess the question from the audio engineer side is, um, do you find that you need to keep yourself very, um, let's say, a fixed distance from the mic? Don't vary like that because you might get a little Doppler effect of moving closer to the mic or away from it as you're playing. And if that's the case, does that limit your expressiveness? Because a lot of people like to move around as musicians when they're playing, right? And
Yeah.
it's not the same if you have to just hold the instrument steady and hold yourself steady and perform it versus how you might perform on stage, for example.
Yes. This is a struggle actually. I think that for something like orchestral parts, like what I was recording for yours, it's easier for me to stay pretty still and pretty, one distance from the mic, because I'm just considering accuracy. And then if you're recording a solo piece and you have there's more room for expression, for example, because you're not playing with other people, um, then you need to be using a mic that's going to capture the room more than, not something where you need to be a certain number of inches away, something where you can set it in the room. And actually, I really like these are kind of probably outdated now, but I used to use this mic a lot, the Zoom, like the little it's like a little camera, and it videotapes and records audio, and it's called a Zoom.
Oh, okay.
And I've used those for plenty of audition tapes, and they're great. The
Well,
sound
whatever
quality,
works. I mean,
yeah. And
that's for
it picks up
sure.
the room, so more
Yeah.
than it doesn't need to be close to you.
That's good info for people who are looking to set up their own music recording business for whatever their instrument is, right? You might want to try some different things, try some different setups, see what works better in your environment. And
Right.
it may differ for your instrument, it may differ for what you're trying to record too, right? The type of music that you're trying to record.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you heavy on social media?
I do use social media. Yes.
Uh-huh. Where can people find you?
My Instagram is probably what I update the most. So
Okay.
that's a great place to find me. It's Elizabeth.viola. Oh no, sorry. It's Elizabeth.irene.viola.
Okay. On Instagram.
Yes, on
Eh,
Instagram.
On TikTok too, or
No, I don't use TikTok. I had it for a while, but it was too addictive, so I got rid of it.
yeah, yes, yes, we have to limit these things sometimes, don't we? But do you,
Right.
do you find that you have, I don't want to say an addictive personality, but when you get into something, do you like really get into it and it kind of takes over for you, whether it's playing a piece or whatever it might be in your life, or do you find that you're more like scattered of different things, a diverse collection of things?
Well, I'm I'd say I'm actually pretty even keeled in that I am a perfectionist about what I'm working on for sure. But I feel like if you go to music school, one of the first things you'll learn is time management because there's no such thing as cramming. You cannot cram. You cannot learn with music you have to practice constantly for a long period of time. You can't, you really can't cram. So it's not like in other areas and other fields where you maybe could. So I feel like being a musician who runs their own business with performing and teaching lessons, etc. I think that yeah, time management is very, very important. And I feel like I'm pretty good at managing my time and trying to do a lot of different things at once. But of course, as far as, my passion projects and recordings that I'm doing for me, of course, yes, sometimes one will take the lead for a while and one will get left behind for a while. And then, that's just
Definitely a
kind of
balancing act, right?
right.
So I have a maybe a second to last question. You have a resident in your room there with you. It's a four-legged furry one. And what's its name?
That's Mila.
Mila. Ah, Mila knows her name too. Mila is a very cute dog, I have to say. How old is Mila?
She's about 7 years old. She's
Okay,
from Sicily. She's a rescue.
nice.
I rescued her when I was living in Berlin, and she was rescued from Sicily. So she's been all over, and she travels really well. She comes with me when I travel.
Wow, nice. That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a
yeah.
rescue also. My daughter and I have a rescue. Ziggy's our rescue. She's 5 now. So
Oh,
yeah. So when you're playing, does Mila, right? Mila?
Mila. Yeah.
Mila. Does Mila enjoy? Does she
Oh, yes.
come over and listen or?
Oh, yes, she loves it. She always parks right, she goes to sleep right in the middle of it. And I like even when I have a whole string quartet rehearsal, like she will lie in the middle and just soak up the sound. Doesn't matter, it'll be loud and she loves it.
That's great. I have to say, when I'm playing saxophone, Ziggy will come and sit. But as
Oh.
soon as I'm doing altissimo practice, then there's a little bit of howling, and then she can't take it anymore, and she leaves. So it's very predictable. With if people would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way, Elizabeth?
Through the contact page on my website. That is a very good way, and just go straight to my email, so I won't
Okay.
miss it. Instagram works as well, but sometimes you get a lot of weird messages on Instagram, so I'm less likely to pay attention to.
And your website URL? Just give it again.
It's just www.elizabethboardman.com.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time, Elizabeth. We wish you the best on everything, and thank you again for recording for me and for the Symphonina Foundation. I'm sure it won't be the last time. It'll be just the first of many.
Thank you for having me.